Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Future Considerations, the show where we debate things that could have happened in sports history if they happened the way that they did or didn't or whatever. We talk about alternate timelines. I'm with Ash, Julian here with you. This week we're going to talk a hockey topic that I wasn't alive for.
Wow.
But yeah, I'm showing my age here a little bit too. But Eric Lindros, known as a prototypical power forward, was drafted by the Quebec Nordiques in the 90s. And that's how old I am. Yeah, he's drafted in the 90s, decides he doesn't want to play for the Nordiques, gets traded at the 92 entry draft to the Philadelphia Flyers. But what if Eric Lindros decided, you know what, I'm going to stay in Quebec?
Can't get enough sports in your life? And be sure to head over to Mojo Travels to see some great ways to satisfy both your soccer and travel obsessions with our list of the top 10 cities football fanatics need to visit. Click the link below.
Ash, do you want to tackle this first?
You're allowed to work here, right? No, I'm kidding. Okay, yeah. Look, there is precedent here. In 1984, Mario Lemieux was drafted by the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Pittsburgh Penguins were not the most respected of organizations. And he said, I'm not going to play for you. He grabbed their jersey, he held on to it, and that's it, that's all. He changed his mind. Eric Lindros was a different beast. He basically said, I'm not going to play for the Nordiques, and he also held on to the jersey, and he didn't. So here's my thought.
Okay.
I actually think that if Lindros were to have played as a Nordique, then if you look at everybody else that they had, you exclude Forsberg, who was drafted 6th overall by the Flyers, who came in that trade, between Joe Sakic and everybody else, even though the Nordiques went to Colorado, traded for Patrick Roy, and that was the dynasty, I don't think necessarily with their goalie Jocelyn Thibault, but I think with their other goalie Stéphane Fiset, who was a bit more clutch and junior and whatnot, I think that team probably would have ended up winning something, because then they just would have been stacked with Lindros and Sakic and everybody else in that organization. And Sundin, of course.
Pieces
Sundin,
on that
exactly.
Team. That's really crazy to really think about that.
Sundin, exactly.
Can you imagine like a center?
Sorry, my point was Sundin was still very young at that point.
Still.
It would have been, I think, Sakic, Lindros, then Sundin, but still nonetheless.
But like a center depth of those three players, we're talking about one of the most talented teams in the 1990s, or maybe of even all time. And even if you're in a situation where Quebec has to get rid of one of those players, and you still get to keep like Lindros and Sakic, that's really remarkable in itself. So Lindros, I think, missed out on being a part of one of the more talented squads as well. Also, one thing I'm kind of thinking about here, Patrick Roy got traded to Colorado in the 90s.
Correct.
If Quebec, they imagine they don't move, and Lindros somehow, the way that he plays, he finds a way to keep them in there a little longer. Does Montreal trade Patrick Roy to that franchise? No, they don't.
No,
I feel like the goaltending that's there might not be as good, and that could stop them from winning. Right?
True, but I mean, look, the reality is even though Roy was amazing as a Hab, and then he went on to Colorado and won even more, I mean, he did have something to prove. But the reality was, and you're seeing it now, I think there were other goalies that the Nordiques, if they felt Thibault or Fiset could not do the job, they could go out and get other players. Without a doubt, Colorado was so dominant because of Patrick Roy. I think he was the foundation in the back, and obviously they had all these crazy forwards, including Peter Forsberg, who then combined with Sakic. Obviously, Sundin got traded to the Leafs for Wendell Clark. But the point I want to make is I think they would have ended up getting another goaltender that would have done the job. But clearly, what turned out to be that Avalanche dynasty was, without Roy, would not have been the same thing. I think there we agree. Because don't forget, even though Roy was from Quebec, he was born in Quebec, drafted by Montreal, there was really no way that, no matter how desperate the Habs were, that they would have traded Roy to Quebec.
So I kind of touched off on the second point I wanted to raise here. Does Eric Lindros somehow keep the Nordiques from moving to Colorado? They moved to Colorado in the 90s. I don't know. I feel as if Eric Lindros at least plays a part in them staying a little longer. I know they had their financial issues, and them being a primarily French market and not having, some of the Anglo, basically the way that was kind of suited up for them, that, in terms of financial stuff for them, it wasn't necessarily perfect for them to be in the NHL. Marcel Lebeau was fighting for a salary cap as well. I think that Eric Lindros, the fact that he would be successful in a Quebec Nordiques uniform, that at least puts bums in the seats, and I think that keeps them there a little while longer. And again, if they have that center depth we were talking about earlier of Lindros, Sakic, and Sundin, I mean, again, all that attention on them as well. I don't know. I think that plays a part.
Are you turning this into an English-French? No, I mean, look, the reality is, I think the reason why the Nordiques left wasn't so much because of the French-English. It was just it's not the biggest city for one, but two, there aren't that many, at the time, there weren't that many businesses to support the suites and the sponsorships. And it was a very small market and small arena. The Colisée was a tiny arena. So I think, look, yeah, sure, maybe Lindros would have kept them there for a few more years, but the exchange rate between the US and the Canadian by the early 2000s just ballooned in favor of the US. So no, I don't think in the end it would have mattered. But yeah, I think Lindros probably 1 or 2 years would have made a difference. The only way the Nordiques would have stayed is if someone like Pelado or La Liberté, the big billionaire owners in the Quebec business scene, would have stepped up and bought them. But that wasn't really going to happen at the time.
Last thing. If Eric Lindros is traded to the New York Rangers, the Rangers were also rumored to be on him at the entry draft. What happens?
Well, Aubu actually made the deal with the Flyers, but also ended up getting a deal in place with the Rangers. There was a bit of controversy. There had to be an arbitration. Long story short, I actually think that, the Flyers, going back to the Broad Street Bullies, were basically this team that just makes you meaner, nastier, tougher. So I think Lindros was already a power forward, was like a big beast, a tank. But I think with the Flyers, he had to go overboard, and he was a lot more physical. I think with the Rangers, he would have probably been he still would have been, the style would not have changed dramatically, but I think it would have been more goals, a longer career, and most definitely less concussions.
Yeah.
So I think the change would have been, the Rangers still win in '94, but probably Lindros goes on to have a longer career with more productivity and less injuries.
Time is out here, but I will just say that I think the Rangers go to the Cup final sooner with Lindros. Yes, there were a couple pieces like Tony Amonte and Alex Kovalev who were rumored to be in the deal, but I think Lindros, fair to say, a bit of an improvement on those players. And you still have Messier. You still have Brian Leetch. Sergei Zubov, in the year they went to the Cup final, had 89 points. That was his best statistical season.
Not too shabby.
Not too shabby at all, but I think the Rangers do really well if they have Eric Lindros. And with that, we have run out of time. Ash, thank you so much for doing this, as usual. Really appreciate you, my brother. If you have suggestions on different topics you want us to talk about on future episodes of this show, put them in the comments below. For Ash, I'm Julian saying so long. Thanks so much for watching another episode of Future Considerations. Bye for now.